Resident Evil is on fire. No joke. Only 4 years ago, Resident Evil was sitting at an impressive 125 million units sold. Now, in 2026, the franchise has sold more than 201 million units, with 18 million copies having sold within the first 3 months of this year alone, all courtesy of Capcom's recently released quarterly earnings report. Talk about a meteoric rise, and with Resident Evil 9 fresh out of the oven, and with the Resident Evil film reboot hitting the big screens this September, you'd be unwise to think Capcom is just calling it quits this early into the series' 30th anniversary. People are playing the heck out of the newer and older Resident Evil games, and while we just got Resident Evil Requiem, perhaps the most requested remake for the franchise yet is only a matter of weeks away from getting officially revealed. Resident Evil Code Veronica Remake has been known to receive countless leaks over the years, starting with the odd 4chan leak back in late 2023, all the way to significant story and gameplay leaks hitting the title consistently up to this day. And in last week's video, linked in the description and at the end of this one, we detailed how some of these leaks could result in, hands down, one of the best Resident Evil games yet. With leakers confident Summer Game Fest will mark the time for this remake's official reveal, and with the series commanding an incredible global audience, it's now time to dive into absolutely everything we know about Resident Evil Code Veronica Remake, from its earliest history of leaks and rumors to the most current info. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, and sub if you loved it. And close out spring in style by saving 10% off your GamerSupps order by using the code FUNMyLife at checkout. And with that, let's get into it. We know it's already a pretty stacked year for the series, fittingly celebrating its 30th anniversary, but could another game, perhaps this time a remake, get announced sometime this year during the anniversary to keep us hyped for what's next? It's definitely sounding like it. Now, the last Resident Evil game, which happened to be a remake, was 2023's Resident Evil 4 Remake. And with Capcom later that year stating that more remakes are on the way, a huge leak surfaced in late November 2023 regarding a Code Veronica Remake playtest. It was also around this time that Capcom shut down a fan remake of Code Veronica, leaving not only a bad taste in the community's mouth, but also potentially signaling that Capcom themselves were hard at work on a Code Veronica remake. Before we dive into the history of leaks regarding this remake, it goes without saying to take all this with a grain of salt, as we literally have no idea if any of this will come to fruition. This video's title and thumbnail literally says leaks and rumors, so just know that going forward. We've also gone over this playtest leak in previous videos, so skip around using the chapters to get to the sections you're most interested in. Alright, in late 2023, this first leak comes from a post on 4chan. Great, off to a wonderful start, from a user from Japan who claims to have been a recent playtester for the opening moments of Resident Evil Code Veronica Remake. The poster has released a decent amount of information pertaining to the opening moments of the game, along with other gameplay features. Starting off, the user claimed that this remake will feature the third-person, over-the-shoulder format that we saw from RE2, RE3, and RE4 remakes, which means we are looking at this potential remake getting rid of the tank controls and dynamic panning camera angles that the original Code Veronica sported. The prologue was said to start with Claire Redfield as she recounts the Raccoon City incident, something that sounds quite similar to how Resident Evil 4 Remake's campaign starts with Leon as he recalls those events. In a major deviation from the original game, however, this remake is said to have players control Claire during the original game's opening cutscene, showcasing her attempting to escape from the guards at the Umbrella building. Now, unlike the action-packed cutscene in the original, the opening in the remake would instead initially serve as a slow-paced tutorial where the player controls Claire in search of her older brother Chris Redfield, going in and out of offices and exploring parts of the building before being spotted by guards, and the ensuing escape, just like the original scene, begins. Claire eventually becomes captured and is sent to Rockford Island, where the game begins. The playtester claimed that the prison area of Rockfort Island is vast, containing many cells and guard rooms where a new character, Ricardo, lets her go. She eventually encounters a military man in a black suit, and while we don't have specifics on whether this is to be a hostile encounter, the man is quickly killed by falling debris from an explosion. This is approximately when the island becomes attacked, and Claire is tasked to escape the island, but before she can do so, she encounters Steve Burnside, a character integral to the plot of Code Veronica in a prison cell. The two converse, and after pleading with Claire to get him out, Claire hesitantly does so. Together, they escape and enter a safe room where the player now has the option to switch freely from Claire to Steve. The playtester suggests that the player can explore the next areas as any character and that each character has their own set of skills. This honestly makes me think of Resident Evil 0, to be honest, and interestingly enough, RE0 is one of the games leaked to be getting a remake. Getting back to the Code Veronica playtest, Claire was said to be better with knives and her aim is better and faster, while Steve can fire 2 guns at the same time, while being able to run faster, but at the detriment of being unable to mix herbs. Steve can also throw his knife from a distance at enemies. In addition to that, Steve is able to employ stealth, as perhaps this new mechanic, introduced from Resident Evil 4 Remake, could make its way into this potential Code Veronica remake. He is also said to know some passwords to traverse to new areas. On the other hand, Claire is said to be better with puzzles, as she can inform the player on how to solve them, and can occasionally find hidden items. The demo is said to end when the two get to the palace before the playtester comically concludes with, quote, "This is all I want to share," end quote, alluding to perhaps more that they don't want to discuss, or simultaneously bullshit, as again, Capcom hasn't officially told us that a Code Veronica remake is in development, even though a mountain of reports and leaks suggest Code Veronica Remake really is happening. Supposing this leak is real, hypothetically, I have to say that I really do like the idea of having the initial scene be playable with Claire in the tutorial section featured at Umbrella. I also like that the remake is going for the third-person over-the-shoulder format here, like the previous remakes have used, as it greatly allows for more gameplay possibilities and is good for newcomers to Code Veronica, as new players are less inclined to play the older Resident Evil games with tank controls and fixed camera angles. I have to say, I am a little skeptical with the player swapping between Claire and Steve, as Steve's gameplay was limited to brief scripted sections in the original, but who knows? If they truly do go down this route, then I hope that these features come to the rumored Resident Evil 0 remake, featuring better swapping between Rebecca and Billy. Again, this is all speculation, and this 4chan post is just that, a 4chan post claiming to be a playtester that played the opening moments of yet again another Resident Evil remake. Let me know what you think about this playtest leak in the comments below. Now, with that big leak out of the way, the next several rumors surrounding this potential game all come from none other than Resident Evil insider Dusk Golem. As always, remember your salt, fellas, as even though he's been on a bit of a hot streak recently, especially regarding his call on Leon being in Resident Evil 9, among other things, he is not infallible. Shortly after the 4chan leak, Dusk did mention that Capcom was working on 5 Resident Evil games, with Resident Evil 9 being one of those games. It wasn't until May 2024 that Dusk finally revealed that remakes of Resident Evil 0 and Resident Evil Code Veronica were in development, with the development team of the Code Veronica remake being Capcom Dev Team 1. The studio primarily responsible for the highly regarded Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 4 remakes, which, if this is true, would be freaking great news for this remake. Kazunori Kadoi and Yasuhiro Anpo, the brilliant duo that led recent remake projects like Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 4 remakes, would no doubt ensure that Code Veronica Remake would be done at the highest quality, likely trying their best to distance themselves from Capcom's controversial Resident Evil 3 remake, a project of which they were not a part of. Nearly a year and a half later, in August 2025, this potential Code Veronica remake got some pretty substantial information from Dusk Golem that hinted at some big deviations over the original Code Veronica release. Starting with the game's development progress, Dusk reported that development on the Code Veronica remake was going exceptionally well. So well, in fact, that this remake was apparently ahead of Capcom's internal schedule, remarking that the team behind the Code Veronica remake was very confident in the work that they were making. Speaking of the development team, Dusk again remarked that Capcom Dev 1 is supposedly in charge of the remake. The same team that worked on Resident Evil 2 Remake and Resident Evil 4 Remake, with both Yasuhiro Anpo and Kazunori Kadoi being the leads of the project. Now, as for when we may get a reveal for this game, Dusk mentioned that it would be very likely that the game gets announced sometime in 2026 as part of Resident Evil's 30th anniversary celebration, alongside Resident Evil Requiem and the new film coming this September. More on that later. Alright, now onto the story and gameplay tweaks. In another post, Dusk reported that instead of a cutscene playing out depicting Albert Wesker's fight with Chris Redfield, that the remake would instead have Chris face off against Wesker in a boss fight. Perhaps this will play out in a similar manner to Leon's knife battle with Jack Krauser in Resident Evil 4 Remake over the original QTE heavy cutscenes. While the fight scene with Wesker is said to be playable here in Code Veronica Remake, Dusk did mention that Chris no longer fights Alexia here, and later clarified that Claire Redfield would be the one that fights Alexia at the end of the game. While Chris is said to play a big role in this upcoming remake, Dusk mentioned that Code Veronica Remake is more of Claire's game, diving deeper into her character growth. Now, speaking of Wesker, Dusk claimed that he will be playing a much larger role in the Code Veronica remake, due in large part to the HCF, standing for Hive or Host Capture Force, which will serve as a major plot point in the remake. Apparently, we are going to be getting a better idea of this highly trained group of soldiers led by Albert Wesker here in this remake, which, I mean, is pretty exciting should any of this actually be true. The setting up of Wesker is essential should Capcom eventually greenlight a Resident Evil 5 remake. So more exposition surrounding Wesker and the HCF would do wonders in properly setting up the character for an inevitable Resident Evil 5 remake in the future. Alright, so this remake is claiming to showcase more of Wesker here, but Dusk also claimed that Steve Burnside was slated to get a personality overhaul. Now, Steve Burnside is, well, easily one of the quirkiest characters Capcom has ever written, and according to Dusk's post, Steve Burnside is going to be a bit more palatable here and less cringy at times, while still keeping some of his quirky traits intact. Moving on to something more structurally interesting with the Code Veronica remake, Dusk makes the claim that Rockfort Island will become a semi-open world area, with Claire's bike leading to greater exploration of Rockfort Island, providing more gameplay and freedom to this eerie setting. This change could make traversing the island a bit more immersive and potentially less linear than before. So I'm really curious to see if this type of direction will come out to be true in the remake, seeing as the original Code Veronica is a very focused and highly linear experience. Color me interested, but at the end of the day, remember, good people, that all of this is 100% unconfirmed hearsay that should never be treated as fact until we see it for ourselves with our own eyes. Dusk has proven to be both relatively reliable while also getting some things wrong, so drill this into your head before you get too hyped about Code Veronica Remake. Fast forward to October 2025, and in a post on October 14th, Dusk claimed that there was a high likelihood that a Code Veronica remake would be revealed sometime in 2026 and released in Q1 of 2027. Dusk continued further, suggesting that Resident Evil 0 Remake, the other highly leaked remake, needed a lot of retooling, as he heard that the development switched over from Capcom Div 1 from M2 as the lead developer of the title, with a 2028 release date still likely for RE0 Remake. He concluded by saying that Resident Evil 4 Remake had a similar switch in development between M2 and Capcom Div 1, but that RE4 Remake turned out to be great, so there really wouldn't be much of anything to worry about there. And that brings us to today, where just days ago in May 2026, Dusk Golem stated that he believes that Code Veronica Remake would get announced at Summer Game Fest this year, which is just a matter of weeks away. He wasn't 100% sure that the game would get revealed at this event in June, but considering Capcom has announced pretty much all major Resident Evil titles during the summer months in recent memory, this year's Summer Game Fest certainly sounds like a good possibility. And that's everything we currently know about the Resident Evil Code Veronica remake from this series of leaks it has received. All we gotta do is be patient, but with Capcom confirming that more remakes were coming years ago, it's safe to say that we likely won't have to wait years until we get the next remake. Hopefully we hear about it in a few weeks, and if not, later this year. But with significant Resident Evil Requiem story DLC on the horizon, there's still more Requiem to sink our teeth into in the coming months. It is an absolutely epic time to be a fan of Resident Evil, so chime down below what your thoughts are of this potential Code Veronica remake, and follow me over to this video where we dive deep into what Code Veronica remake will likely play like, and how these big changes from the leaks we just went over could transform Code Veronica into easily one of the best games in this 30-year-old franchise. Got nothing else for ya. I'll be seeing you all real soon in the next one.